Why did Shedeur Sanders fall to the 5th round of the NFL draft? That was the question all weekend. And the answer is not as simple as a lot of people on Twitter or Stephen A. Smith or RG3 seem to think it is. Mel Kiper had a generational crash out this weekend. I've never seen anything like it from an analyst. I mean, it was incredible that Mel Kiper was arguing for Shedeur Sanders to be the number 1 pick in the draft, which was already asinine, crazy. We talked about it on the show on Friday, but he drops to 144, and all of a sudden Mel Kiper is saying the NFL doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. I do. They've got it wrong for 50 years. I'm right. Remember the Jimmy Clausen thing? I was so dead on about that, right, Mel? It was so bizarre. I mean, we knew going into this that if Shedeur Sanders slipped, like outside of the top 10, it was going to be the biggest story in the draft. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger as he kept sliding into, past day 1, past day 2, way into day 3. And Mel Kiper is crashing out, and people have all kinds of theories on Twitter and on social media and online that Shedeur Sanders was not taken because of his dad, because of his race, because of all these other kinds of things. And I assure you it is much simpler than that. It is. Because, we had, I don't even remember who the bozo was on Thursday night saying, of course the Giants weren't going to pick Shedeur Sanders. They hate black quarterbacks. Of course that, they went out and got 2 black quarterbacks on their roster right now. Their starting quarterback's going to be black. No matter what, it's going to be Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. Okay, they went out and got 2 of them this year. So, yeah, they hate black quarterbacks. So that's why they didn't take Shedeur Sanders. And then it became, the Dion aspect of this. And, of course, there's some weight to that. Of course there is. Dion is brash. He's outspoken. He brings a big-time circus with him. Right? Look at the pro day. Like everyone was forced to wear the ain't too hard to find. And there was all this kind of hullabaloo around the pro day. Honestly, I don't think NFL teams care too much about that. Dion's going to be coaching at Colorado. He's going to be talking about his son no matter where he's playing. Right? I don't think this is not a case of like Dion is going to be there at training camp or going to be holding court after games. It's not going to be anything like that. But this did spark some comparisons. A lot of people comparing it to the 2004 draft when Eli Manning was the consensus number 1 pick, but said he was not going to play for the team that had the number 1 pick, the San Diego Chargers. And I saw this countless times on social media this weekend of people saying, yeah, remember Eli and Archie did this, but no one was talking about that. And now when Shedeur and Dion do it, it's a big deal. And this is one of my least favorite trends amongst anything, but specifically social media. Just because you don't remember it or it was before your time does not mean that it did not happen. Okay? There was no Twitter in 2004, so there's no screenshots we can go back and find the tweets of everybody's fucking opinion on it. But the Eli Manning, Archie Manning 2004 NFL draft saga was the biggest sports story in America at the time. It was a humongous deal. There was the awkward interviews right before the draft. And I mean, it was like Eli was the puppet and Archie had the strings. And they call NFL analysts, not people on Twitter. NFL analysts and sports writers were calling him a brat, entitled, silver spoon in his mouth. Shouldn't have to play it down in the NFL. Kid thinks he can just pick wherever he wants to go. Total entitlement, Nepo baby. I mean, dragged through the mud as much as you could have before social media. But some Joe Blow on Twitter doesn't remember that. So it didn't happen. And that this apparently didn't happen because Archie and Eli are white. I trust you. I assure you, it does happen. It did happen. It was massive news. And he was booed at the draft. The Chargers draft party in San Diego were booing the crap out of him. There's video of people throwing things at the screen and flipping them off. And it was a massive deal. So just because you don't remember it doesn't mean it did not happen. Google is fucking free, man. You can look it up. You can see the stories from that time about the shit they were calling Archie and Eli. But that's revisionist history because it happened 20 years ago, so it didn't happen. Okay? Shedeur Sanders did not slip in the draft because of his dad, and he definitely did not slip in the draft because he's a black quarterback. As we've seen, that's no longer a fear for NFL teams. Unfortunately, it was not all that long ago, but like Lamar Jackson is arguably, I mean, the second best quarterback in the league, won a couple of MVPs. Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league. Like we're past this. We're past that narrative, which is great. It's great. But that's not why Shedeur Sanders slipped in the draft. Shedeur passed up 4 opportunities to play in front of NFL scouts. Okay, the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl, the Big 12 Pro Day, and the NFL Scouting Combine. He didn't do any of those. And there were some questions about his maturity. Yes, like when you play in a Rolex and show it off to the fans after you win a game, or when the opposing quarterback's trying to shake hands with you and you just talk shit to him the whole time. Or the fact that assistant coaches came out and said it was the worst pre-draft interview they've ever heard in their lives. And that was not just one trying to make him slip in the draft to fall to their team, because he was picked in the 5th round. Okay, so that just wasn't lip service. There's something here. But of course, to Mel Kiper and a lot of social media, the NFL can't evaluate quarterbacks. Right. Because for every Tom Brady that's picked 199, there's 10 Peyton Mannings, John Elways, who also got dragged through the mud, by the way, for refusing to play for the team with the number 1 pick in the draft. But again, we don't remember that. Don't remember that because that doesn't fit the story here. There's Joe Burrow's picked number 1 overall. There's Patrick Mahomes picked in the first round of the draft. There's this is not the conspiracy theory you think it is. It's not. And the NFL does know how to evaluate quarterbacks. Sometimes they get it wrong. Of course they do. Of course, man. Mitch Trubisky was picked ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Like that sometimes they do get it wrong. But you saying, Mel Kiper, that Shedeur should have been the number 1 pick in the draft and he drops to 144 is a you problem. It's not an NFL problem right now. If he turns out to be Tom Brady, congrats. You're right. You weren't right about Tom Brady, by the way. You didn't have him as a first-round pick. You had Giovanni Carmazzi over him. So whose problem really is it over the last 50 years? Mel, is it you or is it the NFL? Shedeur Sanders was an excellent college quarterback. He played with a shit offensive line, but he did play for an NFL offensive coordinator, and he was pretty good. That doesn't always translate to being the best quarterback in the draft. You look at the top college quarterbacks ever, the top, winners in college football, the top touchdown throwers in college football. Joe Burrow has the greatest season, and he becomes the number 1 pick, leads his team to a Super Bowl appearance, and he's a pretty damn good quarterback in this league. But you look at some of the other ones at the top, Graham Harrell, Case Keenum, Cliff Kingsbury, Timmy Chang, Colt Brennan, the late Colt Brennan. Just because you're a good quarterback in college and you put up great numbers does not mean you're going to be a great pro. It doesn't mean that at all. Colt McCoy and Sam Bradford and Tim Tebow were the 3 Heisman finalists in 2008. They were all seen as big-time quarterback prospects. They all sucked in the NFL. One was picked number 1 overall. Another was picked in the 1st round. Another was picked in the 3rd round. And they all sucked. Just because you're a good quarterback in college does not mean you're instantly a good pro. And it does not mean that when you're picked in the 5th round that there's this grand conspiracy against you from 32 NFL teams. Like, you really think the Browns care about his race or his dad? They're behind everybody in developing quarterbacks. And you think that's what they're going to hold up as like, here's why we can't pick the guy in the 1st round? They picked another quarterback ahead of him, man. He's coming in as a depth guy. Or name your team, by the way. Name your team that can't develop quarterbacks, right? The Raiders or the Cardinals who are looking for something else, or, name your team. And you really think that's what they're going to take into account when they're falling behind everybody else in the National Football League? It's just crazy to me that people think like this. That's not the reason Shedeur slipped in the draft. There were some maturity concerns, not as many as some of the other players in the draft. We talked about Braden Swinson from LSU dropped like 70 spots on the big board to go to the Patriots in the 5th round because of some character concerns. Shedeur was not seen as a slam dunk first round pick going into the draft, only to Mel Kiper. Anyway, I do want to know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Only about 10% of you are actually subscribed that are watching, so subscribe. We're bringing you nothing but Boston sports content 5 days a week, live on YouTube, high noon Eastern time, and then wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Cam Stewart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air. Check out the other videos on the channel to keep up with all that we're doing here on The Cam Show.